Hi, good day, everyone. Today we're going to continue our lecture related to Internet of Things, specifically on the topic cloud computing. Let's continue from where we stopped the last lecture. I think the last lecture we talked about MQTT broker. Now, of course, next thing coming to your mind is that where do we put this broker, right? I think one of the best place or suitable place would be in the cloud. Yeah, if when you put in the cloud, which means that as long as your devices or your sensors can connect to the cloud, then you can actually uh, transmit and receive data. All right, let's look at cloud computing in a more specific way. Now, cloud computing um, is not the main topic in this subject. Probably you're going to learn them in distributed systems. But again, just to quick recap, like what's cloud computing? Now, basically, the idea of cloud computing is you can imagine that we just basically need a server hosted in the internet so that we can actually have a common point where all the data and all the sensors can exchange data um, at this server. Yeah. Now, of course, in the old days, you can always subscribe to any internet hosting to actually host this service. But over the years, yeah, the whole process become more automated. And of course, one of the good thing about cloud computing is that the cost is actually much if which I would say that the cost is much more lower, especially when you sometimes do not need to really run the thing for like very very long. It's on demand basis. So this is one thing good about cloud computing. Yeah. So if we want to just to do point of proof of concept, cloud computing is a very good choice if you ask me. Of course, for long-term operation, it is also a good choice, but you need more uh, effort in really architect your solution well. Now, how did the cloud computing come about is that thanks to virtualization technology, where which this service provider they start to perform do virtualization. In other words, it's kind of like sharing one physical server with multiple users or multiple use cases where they can just create uh, instances. Yeah, I mean the word instances, you can just imagine that it is like a server. I mean, to an end user, we basically just uh, use them as if there's a server out there. But for cloud computing, from their perspective, basically they just fire up a virtual machine and then allow you to access to that virtual machine. And the good thing is that they can actually slice a server into multiple virtual machines where they can actually uh, rent it out in a very cost-effective way. Hence, why cloud computing is more cost-effective compared to traditional uh, hosting a server in a data center. Then of course their model, one thing I like the most is a service model. So you pay as you use, and if you are not using that much, basically you don't pay. Okay, we can actually do nowadays there's a lot of automation. We can do auto scaling. Or when the demand is lesser, they can actually shrink. When the demand is high, they can actually expand it. Yeah, so is the sort of automation there. I think the even much more interesting is that they nowadays they don't just count at infra as a service. We call it IaaS. Uh, there's also like SaaS, which is software as a service. Now, if you imagine, if you just want to use some software and you really do not want to, bother with maintaining the system or the software details, the backend. Yes, they are also providing all these services to you. If you see carefully, or if you browse through their services now, you can see that they also include lots of AI packages inside there, or AI services inside there, where you can actually use them. Now, of course, there are a lot of there are few type of deployment model. It can be public, private, and it can be hybrid. Now, for us, from an IoT perspective, all right, we have to them to us it's the same. We just need a point where we can actually store our data, process our data, and also a point where we can actually exchange messages. So it really depends on your use cases. So say sometimes, maybe the scenario that you have is that you want the data to be retained inside the premise. You do not want all the data that from your sensors to be stored in the cloud. Maybe you can go for private. Of course, if your organization is huge or advanced enough, they can actually host their own hybrid cloud. Now, the easiest one, if you ask me, it would be public cloud, where you use cloud service providers such as Azure, um, AWS, or Google Cloud. These are the major players where you can just open an account. Yeah, you can fire up the services that you need, and then you can start developing your solution already. That's the beauty of it. Now we will soon look into the more detail, yeah. Now, as I mentioned just now, we have public, private, and hybrid cloud. Again, public cloud is the easiest one for user like us. The thing is, not everyone like it because again, sometimes they want the data to be stored in a private manner. Of course, there are some industry have this legal requirement. For instance, banking or medical, those data they need to be stored in certain very strict security or a strict requirement environment. That might not be provided uh, by the public cloud. Hence, they will have to opt for private cloud. Now, basically, the whole idea of private cloud is that the organization itself, they host their own the cloud, whereas only among their authorized user can actually spawn instances, scale the resources inside the private cloud. Of course, hybrid would be something in between these two, where you can have certain resources run privately and certain resources when there are not enough resources that can scale to the public cloud. Yeah. Now, all this, all right, to us, the most common is always the public cloud. Yeah. That's and in fact that's the easiest accessible to user like public user like us. Now again, as I mentioned earlier, when we go for a project, especially in designing IoT solution, on-prem is always um, something that stakeholder will always like to consider because to them, um, yes, the investment upfront is high, especially in hardware and also setup. But if the system is meant for running long run, okay, to be in operation for a long run, sometimes the stakeholders preferred on-prem solution. Okay, of course, personally, if you ask me, I will always prefer the public cloud. It has a less headache in terms of hardware management. But again, do not be surprised that yes, a lot of industry or especially sometimes SMEs, they prefers it to be on-prem. Okay, on-premise, in short, we call it on-prem. So, of course, as I mentioned earlier, if you compare on-prem and cloud computing, okay, the advantages is that cloud computing allow us to focus on the software or on the operation. We don't part of the like the hardware, the infra, the detail of um uh updates, maintenance, all these are actually outsourced. Okay, it really depends on how you compute your costs. Yeah, in general, right? I would say that shifting to the cloud is actually much more cost effective. And you can reduce your upfront costs. Imagine that you invest in your servers, your network connectivity, your server rooms, your air conditioning, everything, and then just to realize that how uh, the data that you get from your sensing, yeah, it does not give you the return of investment as you like, and then you want to, let's say, shut it down and do something new, then you realize that the upfront costs that you invest on prime solution is actually very, very high. So again, if you have cloud computing, all right, I think you can always use it to do POC. It's much better, okay, proof of concept, and for especially from a trial run at the front, uh, upfront, the cost is low, and of course it's pay as you go model. And in fact, if out of certain, um, let's say the operation want to scale, with cloud computing, you can scale that even though you are just starting in a proof of concept, but from proof of concept to scale, I would say that the cloud computing will give you lots of extra advantages. Yeah. Now, of course, although we always say pay as you go model, so but again, please, you have to really check the costing as well. Yeah, sometimes pay as you go might not be as cost effective as it is. It will be if you know that you need to use it for a specific period of time. Probably sometimes it's better that you can go for reserve the resources from the cloud. And you probably get an even better pricing. Yeah, I mean, to a lot of operation cost is something very important. Yeah. So therefore, if you know, then yes, you can even lower your cost. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, the dynamic scaling is one thing that is really, really a great feature of cloud computing. You can use it to scale up and down based on your own demand. Imagine when you know in the morning, maybe you need to handle lots of operation from all your IoT sensors. You can just scale up the resources. And at night, after the operation peak hours, you can also tune down or scale down your system just to keep it um, operational. But you know that you don't need that much resources. You can just scale it down, and then again, it can help you further become more cost effective. Yeah. So in other words, cloud computing really give you a lot of these advantages. How you need to remember is these advantages technologically is achieved through virtualization. Yeah. Of course, over the years, all these cloud service providers are getting more and more advanced, where some of them you can actually scale your storage, scale your RAM. Okay, let's say you need more RAM. You don't even need to restart your instance. Yeah, they can do it uh, while your instance is running. Now that's the beauty of it. Yeah. Okay. And of course, one thing that do not forget to consider when you design your IoT solution is that you always need to take into consideration of the cloud security. Now, there are lots of smaller cloud service provider out there as well. Uh, and also one thing you need to take note is that the um, local regulation. Sometimes the data that you store, whether or not certain data center, resides a certain region, allow you to store that kind of data. You have to be very, very careful with that. And of course, to us, security is the most important thing. You do not want people to actually able to retrieve your IoT sensor data, and then they can put you work backwards. Like for instance, to compute your manufacturing cost, manufacturing duration. Yeah, so are the things that you want them to access. Of course, that's still not the worst. The worst is that when we are doing smart factories, we have this IoT solution installed everywhere. We are worried that intruders come in to the system and then start sending malicious messages to our system, and then crash our system or causes damage to the to the factories. So these are the things you have to really pay attention. Now the cloud, of course, the cloud service provider, they always provide uh, the best security measures that they can. And of course, you have to understand that the role of the software as well, or us as the application developer. So sometimes the although it stays like that, many people thought that okay, it's safe cloud, then it's safe, But sometimes it's due to our own system design, negligence, right? For example, maybe the way, yes, the server is safe from the physical layer all the way to the network layer, but when we design the application is not secure enough, and that's where the security get compromised. Um, Security is going to be more and more important over the years. So when we design solution, we always have to pay lots of attention to this because it's not like the old days, where we just log in just to see a few data, and this data might not be that. Uh, I mean, if even it's breach, it might not be that significant. The threat is low. But imagine that now we have Internet of Things plus smart factories. Yes, the security is very important. Yeah. Next will be cloud computing is getting more and more automated. Now, a lot of things that we do, the backend, there actually no human. Basically, all the configuration the moment you select it on your console or your portal with the cloud self-service UI. Um, that's where you actually put in all the configuration you want, and the backend are all done uh, automatically, seamlessly. Yeah. So again, thanks to all this, all right, the process become very efficient. Okay, very efficient, and there are a lot of things that you can activate. Like for example, you can even set it that the servers you have this hot backup, cold backup, periodic storage, or periodic backup. You can do failover, yeah, failover automatically. In other words, right, it can handles uh, it can allows you to have your service to be available, uh, high availability. I mean to achieve at a high availability most of the time. In fact, they can if you configure it well enough, it can have a disaster recovery as well, especially if you have servers in multiple region, data center at different places, so that to make sure that your operation keeps on going, even though when things happen. Now, these are the good thing about cloud computing. Of course, all these when you design a solution, you probably have to factor in the cost. Okay, factor in the cost. Cloud computing cost is one of the I would say that uh, not very difficult to estimate, especially as a small system. But of course, the last one, you probably need to spend more time in calculating all the small usage. And different cloud service provider probably have different way of charging. So that's where you need to pay attention. Okay, this is the most important one. Okay, this is the most important from the lens of IoT. Yeah, from the lens of IoT, cloud computing, right? Why do we need cloud computing in the first place? Yeah, probably you can think of it. Okay, I just need the server. You can just leave it there and store all the data there. I can use some simple dashboard to visualize that. In a way, it's not wrong, but again, as I mentioned, there are so many advantages with cloud computing, especially for production use. Yeah, I would still strongly recommend you to go for a good cloud service provider. Now, from the IoT purposes, okay, what are the purposes? The first thing is that cloud computing provide you literally unlimited storage. Yeah, if you come to think of that, you can actually store large amount of data from all your sensors. Now, uh, especially when we are in classes, one or two sensors, the data generated, because due to short period of time as well, especially when you're doing a project, The data storage part doesn't seem important or crucial. It's just that yeah, it's just probably a few KB. Now, if you imagine that a few KB, you multiply by hundreds of sensors, and then you multiply by time, which is because usually IoT sensors usually run 24/7, yeah, which means the amount of data is eventually going to grow more and more and more. Yeah, of course, we need to have a mechanism to store that, and in cloud computing, there are lots of them. For this particular topic, all right, in the next lecture, we will talk about types of databases. Yeah, so we'll go into that later. And so over here, from the cloud computing perspective, imagine centralized, you can actually define how to manage your data. Okay, sometimes you can do things like, for example, after running it for 1 month, and then you can actually keep that into a backup because probably you know that the retrieval is lesser. So you can actually, arrange things like, for example, certain of the storage you can move from a high high speed retrieval to a lower speed retrieval where the cost is actually lower. Yeah. And interestingly, IoT data sometimes it doesn't really mix much value on its own, but rather sometimes you want to have the IoT data from multiple sensors or the whole process flow to actually make sense out of it. That's where you probably want to store all the data. And I understand some of the systems they design it says that okay, I only keep the last 24 hours of the data. So if anything more than that, I'm not going to keep it. For example, your some security cameras, yeah, these durations. Um, yeah, probably the data is good for operation, but let's say if you want to bring it to the next level, you want to do analytics, you want to do some more in-depth um, data science of kind of like data science, you want to analyze deeper and further into the history. That is where if you don't have a good storage, probably you don't have all this data. Yeah, so you're gonna kind of like a miss opportunity. Now, of course, again, processing all this data requires processing power. And nowadays we are talking about you need to have AI models as well. Where do we host them? Yeah. So again, a much more cost-effective way is to just host them in the cloud. Cloud computing literally provide us like, not only just unlimited storage but also unlimited processing power. In a way, yeah, in a way, of course, there are definitely still limits, but in a way for our usual operations, yeah, from that perspective, it really seems like it's unlimited. Yeah. Um, I this data processing, right? Once you collect the data, you probably want to seek for certain patterns, yeah, or you try to decipher the meaning of the machine. Sometimes you know when the machines have a certain vibration that you want to detect. No, this is not normal vibration. This is normal vibration. You want to do preventive maintenance. You need to do some analytics. All this require processing power, and this processing power again we can actually leverage on cloud computing so that we can actually use them to do processing. Now, again, if you imagine that if you have an on-prem solution, yeah, one solution is one server running on-prem, and if there's a certain need of processing a large amount of data, then you probably has a limited processing power, and that's the bottleneck that you have. Now, in computing, we don't really have this issue because we can always scale our resources. Let's say if one instance not enough, you can scale to two or four and six. You can just keep on going. Or when we say we scale number of instances, yeah, you scale from one to two, two to four like that. This is what we call horizontal scaling. Okay, of course, your application have to support parallel processing. Another way we call it vertical scaling. Vertical scaling is that you actually change um the the specs of your machine. Like for example, the original cloud instance that you have is running on quad core. Yes, you can actually go for an octa core or more CPUs. Yeah. When there's no GPU, you can actually configure it to do that. When you don't have enough RAM, you can actually increase it. All this helps to improve the processing speeds. Yeah. So again, cloud computing is really, really good, especially in that. And you can get all that done, probably in almost instantly, especially if you just configure yourself through the portal. Okay. More importantly, if you have the server, without internet connection, it's pretty much useless, right? So you need to have the server, and then you need to have a very reliable connections. That's what the cloud computing provide. And that's also where you can actually host your own application inside. Yeah, where you can. Now, a lot of people thinking of cloud computing, host application. What kind of application? Just like I mentioned, for example, you need to do some AI to do some processing to get inside. And then commonly people always thought that there's another application which is just to uh, visualize. Okay, just to do visualization dashboard showing the results. That's mainly for the front end of the for the user. Actually, there's a lot of application that we need to host as well. If you imagine that if you need to register new um, sensors, no, yeah, you have a new sensor, you want to register it into your systems. That also requires an application. Or if you want to have um, mm, a central point to decommission or to to add new sensors. This is for under device management. And this add and remove thing, it's not as easy as what we thought, because one of the things that we want to consider would be the security. Now imagine if your cloud IoT cloud solutions, the application is not properly well secure, then people can steal your sensor or add malicious sensors into your system and then provide you with all the wrong data, and then ended up your system will flooded with data that's malicious, that's not correct, and it makes your whole operation decision making, providing you the wrong information to make the wrong decision. Yeah. So therefore, the device management is also very important. So you can think of application hosting and device management. It's kind of like one is to host the application where your user can use it. Another one is that you need to be like the administrator to actually manage your system and hardwares. Yeah. So these are the things that you need to know. Yeah. This like especially this slide is super important. Yeah. What's the purpose of IoT computing? Now, the purpose is going to be more apparent when you have lots of sensors to handle, and not just like I deploy. It's like you needed to do maintenance uh, for really, really like an operation for numbers of years. Yeah, you know that all these tools are super, super essential. Okay, so I hope you remember the purpose of cloud computing from the IoT perspective. Yeah, you must remember that. And of course, there are lots of cloud service provider out there, public cloud service provider, for example, AWS. You can check them out. I think AWS and Azure IoT Hub, IoT Cloud, Azure Cloud, sorry. Um, they do have this free tier trial, so I would strongly recommend you to uh, register yourself an account and try to explore. Uh, Google Cloud as well. Yes, I think this is easy. I think lots of you like to use Firebase. Yeah, and I just want to tell you that there are actually much more options out there. So you should actually go and explore more on this IoT Cloud. There are quite a number of them for you to explore. And then of course, in the recent years, we have lots of IoT, no, AI solutions. Actually from image recognition, uh, object detection to language linguistic reasoning, large language model. they do all provide you the services where you can use it, but again, beware, these AI services are usually the more expensive one. Yeah, compared to IoT, uh, the price are much lower. And this public cloud IoT, right, usually they provide you the device management part very, very well, where you can actually manage the security of your devices, management. That part is actually, I would say that is the strength of this IoT device, strength of this IoT uh, service provider, this cloud service provider. Do spend some time and explore them. Now, of course, the most important of all today in these slides would be uh, pay attention to this. All right, that's all for today. Thank you very much. Take care. Goodbye.